What systems separate a six-figure biz from a seven-figure biz? And I know that you have experience with that just recently because I know you went in you're helping out John Strumberg from Washington, and that dude is just murdering the junk removal game. So yeah, kind of tell us what's the difference between a six-figure biz and a seven? What systems are they using? And you could use John as an example if you would like.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing, systems. You're having systems and processes, because if you don't implement them, it's going to be hard for you to scale later on. You have to have training process. You have truck team members in there. You can't just start throwing them in to a truck and say, learn from that guy. That's not scalable. You have to have a process that you can, repeat over and over and over again so that you can step back. And this is good advice for you, Paul, because, in the future, you've talked about, having locations at the other places that you live and everything else. The one thing that you're going to want to do now is start documenting.
SOP.
Document, yeah, start doing those standard operating procedures, start documenting everything, having those processes and systems in place, track, performance metrics, those KPIs, those key performance indicators are very, very important.
Can you give
Um,
us a list right now? Because a lot of people, they say they track the numbers, but what numbers exactly in junk removal do we really want to focus in on? I
okay, and
know it's
then
the COGS.
right. Well, that depends on if you're looking, because most people, when they're looking at it, you have John on here. He's going to, talk about, he talks a lot about COGS and everything else. A lot of that is the business health, right? When you're talking about, your cost of goods served, or cost of goods, you have a lot of different metrics that represent the business health. But what a lot of people ignore is the performance part, and that's okay, because most people are, a lot of people that are listening on here are smaller businesses. They don't have truck teams and everything else. But when you're talking about scaling, you have to be able, if I walked into your business, how many guys do you have, Mr. Yee?
I I would say about under 10.
10 guys, that many working for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can. Yeah.
Now, if I
When
walk
I need them, when I need them.
okay, if I walked into any one of those guys and I walked up to him and I asked him, how do you measure your success with this, with no limit hauling? What do you think they would answer?
Go talk to Mr. Yee.
Okay.
That's
You know,
exactly what
they
they're gonna
they
say.
should be able to answer that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having those performance numbers, they need to know where they stand. That's why a lot of people ask me, how long do people stay in, how many their truck teams, what's their longevity? It's usually, 2 years or whatever before they burn out, because
Hmm.
they don't see a future with the company. They don't see forward momentum. They don't see, if you get them and you know you inspire them to actually want to grow the company for themselves, to create that opportunity for that forward momentum, then they're bought into the business and they're bought into your growth. So you giving those numbers, the average job size is a great one to track. Your revenue per hour, you can even go as hard as revenue per mile. There's so many different
There's
metrics
one
you
of
can
those I
do.
got to stop you at. The average job size. This thing I took from you that was whole next level from what most people say. You were said it was 70% of your full load price should be what you're shooting for. Is that correct? That's the number that you say.
Yes, but I'm going to tell you something right now, and a lot of the larger companies probably won't agree with me. I don't care. This is my opinion because I've done the research and I've put into action over years. You know, really, if you really, really, really want to dial in, is not don't just track the AJS, the average job size, because a lot of that can get skewed if you have a lot of big commercial jobs, right? If you really want to get dialed into your business, track the residential average job size. Do it like, maybe 65, 66% of your full load rate. If you can get your truck team to hit that at a regular basis, all those other metrics will fall into place. All the business metrics, your gross, profit, everything is going to fall into place if you can keep that residential average job size at least 66% of your full load rate.
That would be amazing. Oh my God, I'm thinking
You
the
know,
numbers in my head.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you crunch those numbers, if you can do that, and if they're not doing that, figure out how to do that. Start training your team how to do that. You know, the one thing that a lot of people overlook when it comes to going to these jobs is what I call FMJ, find more junk. And I train my teams to find more junk, and I start that on the call ahead, right? When I'm calling a customer, the first thing, I'm telling them, hey, I'm on my way. We're going to be there in about 15 minutes and everything else. But I just want to remind you, we are a fully licensed and insured company, and we can go anywhere in your house. And then I start naming off places like the attic, the crawl space, the garage, basement, backyard. And the one that my favorite place is the shed, because people forget about their sheds and the crap that they have loaded in there. So you start talking about that, then they're going to start thinking about it. And this is especially true when you're talking about like single item jobs. You're going to pick up a sofa. That sofa is the project. You know, they have a new sofa coming in, so they're getting rid of the old one. Or that mattress that you're picking that up because they got a new one coming in. That's the project. That's all they're thinking about. 99% of those people have more junk, but that's not the project they're thinking about. So you remind them that you can go and handle that stuff for them. Now they start thinking about it. By the time you show up, they're like, hey, I know you mentioned you can check this out. My husband's been promising me to get rid of this crap out of the basement for the past 9-10 months, and he keeps procrastinating. Do you mind taking a look at it? Yeah, absolutely. I might have gone in there for a $150 couch, but I'm leaving with a full truckload now because I'm getting
So,
shit out of the basement too. And that's,
so now,
you have to look for more junk.
so now, Kevin, we're talking about a team and your crew and everything. What about for those guys out there who are a single man team?
The same thing applies. You
Okay.
know, teach yourself how to do these jobs at a higher level, how to
Mm-hmm.
close those jobs. I have a training for that teaching them how to do that, to build that rapport with customers, how to, find more junk at jobs, how to, have that different mindset of not just straight transactional, you know, it,
And Mr. Yee,
these
I gotta
things.
say, all this works. So I mean, everything that he's saying, I'm practicing and trying. And I'll get one part of it down, and then I'll add another part of it. And it's like the more I say it, the more it just comes natural, and the more flow. It's coming a recording in my head, and just eating,
Absolutely.
adding another part to it each
Up,
time.
absolutely upsell. Some of us are born with this. Some of
Yeah, and
us,
that's
I
the
walk
thing.
in houses and see so many things I can help somebody with. I have a
Yeah.
habit of saying, yes, I can do that. And I got to stop myself from saying, no, I can't do, no, you know what, ma'am, I can't do that. I got a guy, but I got to stop myself so much from saying yes,
Yeah, you
because
walk
that's
up
how,
and you see a pile of branches, that they did some yard work on the side of their house. Hey, while I'm here, I can take care of that for you. But to me,
so,
when I hear a single item, somebody calls me to pick up just one single item, to me, I'm like, challenge accepted. I'm going to walk out of there with something else. I'm going to try my damnedest to get something else out of there. And they're the easiest ones to upsell. You just
mhm.
have to have that mindset where you're asking them, and you're reminding them, especially on that call ahead. That's the
That's
best
the
place
way
to
to
plant
start.
that seed. When you show up, they show you, okay, we're looking at this and this and everything else. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, like I mentioned before, we can go anywhere and anywhere in your house. If you have anything else while we're loading this up, if you can think of anything else that you want, we'll take care of that for you. But
Now,
here's the kicker. Here's the kicker, though. None of that is going to work if you're straight transactional, like I mentioned before.
Mm.
If you're in there, where's your junk? They're just wanting to get rid of you. Here's the stuff. This is the transaction. Okay, get it, go, buy. Here's your money, go. But if you're building that relationship with them, now they're trusting you so much, they want to give you more. They want to be able, they say, hey, you know what? This guy's awesome. I do have some more stuff. And you remind them, and later on down the road, if they see you doing this job, you're about 75% done with the job, and they see how you're working, you're loving your job, you're still talking to them, building rapport, building that relationship for them. Now they start thinking, now they see value in you, and they're like, and you know what, I do have that other stuff that I needed to get rid of. Let me just take care of it now. But
and that's all
Uncle
by getting
Junker's
your foot in the door.